Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Wednesday, March 1st, 2023. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to do a juxtaposition, a comparison between two people who are raising their voices. One is being labeled as having a meltdown, screeching, and is being attacked by Republicans and conservatives all over around the country. Randi Weingarten, who is the president of the American Federation of Teachers, gave testimony in front of the gave a speech in front of the Supreme Court, the steps of the Supreme Court. And I will play that clip for you. She was furious, as we all should be, because the Supreme Court is positioned. It looks as though they are going to completely scuttle the student loan forgiveness program that Joe Biden finally put into action. The program doesn't forgive all debt. It just forgives a modest fraction of most student debt, a modest fraction. OK, and she had it. She hated the fact that the Supreme Court is now reviewing whether or not we're going to help students as compared to all the other cases that they didn't take. They didn't review the PPP loans that went to help businesses. Right. So she made that juxtaposition, and I want you to listen to her. And then I want you to compare it to this clip I have of Ted Cruz yelling at Attorney General Merrick Garland in testimony today. And his particular beef was because he feels that the Department of Justice isn't prosecuting enough activists, particularly the activists who demonstrated in front of the homes of Supreme Court justices. So there's the connection there with the Supreme Court. First, here's Randi Weingarten, who is, well, you make your own estimation. I think she's conveying a point.
And frankly, and this is what really pisses me off, during the pandemic, we understood that small businesses were hurting. And we helped them, and it didn't go to the Supreme Court to challenge it. Big businesses were hurting, and we helped them, and it didn't go to the Supreme Court to challenge it. All of a sudden, when it's about our students, they challenge it, the corporations challenge it, the student loan lenders challenge it. That is not right. That is not fair, and that is what we are fighting as well when we say cancel student debt.
That's right. Cancel student debt. Now, whether or not you feel like she was screeching, that's that's up to you. But what she was saying was poignant, and she was at a rally. Now, I don't personally care that conservatives are labeling this as a meltdown. What I care about is the point. Right. Of course, Republicans are going to find anything they can to dismiss a salient point, especially when it's coming from a left-leaning progressive Democrat and a woman. Right. And now they have all over Twitter, all over the social media, articles are being written about it because forget about what she said. Everyone is focusing on how she had a meltdown. Well, let's take in consideration her point is absolutely sound. The fact of the matter is that this country doesn't challenge big business getting all of the handouts. They only challenge when average Americans can get something back from the government that we pay taxes into. OK, the government that takes a cut of our checks every single pay period. Right. We are entitled to withdraw from this government benefits for the average citizen. But when it comes time for that, we see nonstop lawsuits to neutral if we get anything in the first place. Can I start there? Because it's not as though we normally see something actually done for the American people. We regularly see bipartisan support to do something for businesses. We always see bipartisan support when it comes time for war and the funding of the military industrial complex. Whenever we see a party, the Democratic Party particularly, because we haven't seen the Republicans do anything for the average American in my lifetime, period. Every piece of legislation handed down by Republicans is something to help business or to help the military industrial complex, which is a business, right? We rarely get anything for the average American. And when we get something, it is immediately challenged. And now it looks like the Supreme Court, underneath the leadership of Chief Justice John Roberts, is going to undo the student loan forgiveness program. So, yeah, she has a right to be upset. We should all be upset because it wasn't anything but a token giveaway to as a fraction of the total student debt. It's not as though what was being done was something that was actually revolutionary or even something that was liberation, because most people have more than the $10,000 to $50,000 of student loan that need to be forgiven. But yet and still, when the United States government picks up, when a party finally decides to do something for the average American, well, you get taken to the Supreme Court. And there we have a conservative leaning court who's more than happy to lend credibility. They're willing to leverage the reputation and the dignity of the institution of the Supreme Court of the United States in order to move a conservative agenda. So it's not as though they are actually concerned about the institution of the Supreme Court, John Roberts. You're not actually concerned about the legitimacy of the Supreme Court. You're concerned about accomplishing a radical conservative agenda. And if the court is burned to the ground, so be it. That's what they would like. What they would like is to be able to get away with everything that they are doing on that Supreme Court. Now that they have a majority conservative justices, they're able to give this veneer of legitimacy to it, and they are able to accomplish the conservative agenda. But at the end of the day, Americans, and particularly people of good faith, can see that this court is corrupt. This court has been sandbagged with conservatives. Merrick Garland, who we're going to play a clip of in a moment, was supposed to be on that Supreme Court. It was stolen by Donald Trump and none other than Turtle Mitch McConnell, right? So here's the next clip. I want you to compare what was roundly lambasted by conservative media and some regular mainstream media. Not that conservative media isn't mainstream. Let me correct myself there. Randi Weingarten was roundly condemned as having a meltdown. Well, what do you call this exchange with Ted Cruz as he's yelling at the attorney general about, and not even giving him a chance to answer? Literally told him, no, you cannot answer. This exchange is a little bit longer, so buckle up.
How do you decide which criminal statutes the DOJ enforces and which one it doesn't?
The United States Marshals know that they have full authority.
I recognize you want to give a separate speech.
No, I don't want to.
How do you decide which statutes you enforce and which ones you don't?
The Marshals on scene make that determination in light of the priority of defense.
The Marshals do not make a determination over whether to prosecute. You, the Attorney General, make a determination, and you spent 20 years as a judge, and you're perfectly content with justices being afraid for their children's lives, and you did nothing to prosecute it. Let's shift to another area.
Can I answer the question?
No, you cannot. You have refused to answer the question.
I am answering your question.
He didn't want you to answer the question, Attorney General Merrick Garland, because he is afraid, just like most conservatives, they're afraid of context and nuance. They're afraid of substance. They need sound bites. And this is what he was auditioning for tonight, was a sound bite that could be played on Sean Hannity or on Tucker Carlson, wherever he's going to land on Fox News tonight. See, this is labeled as a champion, right? This is a championship moment. Ted Cruz is being labeled as a lion, as a hero for going after Merrick Garland. You know, the articles all across the internet are dropping like Ted Cruz demolishes Attorney General Merrick Garland. Ted Cruz devastates. But all I heard was the screeching, yelling, and down talking of a senator who didn't even have enough in him to stay in his state while people were dying during the deep freeze of 2 years ago. All I hear is the political agenda of a political party that no matter what a Democrat does, it will always be considered as something that is damnable and attackable. In this case, Ted Cruz is trying to use the force of the Department of Justice to clamp down even harder on protesters of the Supreme Court. And see, this is all kabuki theater at this point. Everything that you see, everything that you're hearing coming out of the Congress, out of Senate, out of these testimonies, out of these trials, out of these hearings, it's all kabuki theater showcase for them to get more publicity later. Meanwhile, actual tangible benefits for the average American they're under attack. We don't stand a chance of actually getting something for the American people because we're not allowed to get angry over that, right? Randi Weingarten was not supposed to get that angry. She had a quote unquote meltdown while she was fighting for something good for the people, standing up and making the point that the Supreme Court is being wielded against the American people while it's being used to buffer and to support corporations. And of course, this is the entire point, right? This is the entire framework that conservatives believe in, to the point where, of course, they're going to see Ted Cruz as a champion, because Ted Cruz is protecting the court even more than they need to be protected. The Supreme Court has protection around the clock. What they don't get to do is to be held unaccountable and untouchable by any protesters, any type of dissent, any type of peaceful protest. You don't get to hide from that, Republicans. You don't. You simply do not, even though that's what they're trying to do. And that's what they're trying to weaponize the Department of Justice for. They're trying to weaponize it, even though it's underneath the code. I mean, I want to pause for a second. We have seen the effects of a weaponized Department of Justice plenty of times throughout American history. The most recent one I can think of is when Donald Trump literally sent federal agents to kill a Black Lives Matter protester by the name of Michael Reinhold. Okay, I covered it extensively when it happened. They literally pulled up on this guy and gunned him down. So the department, this is not a little thing. It's not as though this is something that weaponizing the Department of Justice is a little thing. No, we've seen people die as a result of it throughout American history. And Ted Cruz is yelling at the Attorney General saying, give us more. Meanwhile, while Randi Weingarten is saying, can we please have like $10,000 of student loan forgiveness, all of a sudden, she's the one who's having a meltdown. I'm sorry, a meltdown is not predicated on the volume of your voice. Meltdown is not predicated on the intensity of the message that you're trying to convey. What the real meltdown is, what we see happening all around this country, is the complete and total implosion of our democracy because of the foolishness, the hypocrisy, the absurdity, and the kabuki theater of our politicians, especially the likes of Ted Cruz. If there is one politician who is, of course, playing a role, but fits the role of complete nincompoop perfectly, it would be Senator John Kennedy from the state of Louisiana. Now, I understand he is putting on a bit of a show when he does this honky-tonk country accent, but the stupidity that surrounds everything that he says, that's genuine. Here he is today going after Attorney General Merrick Garland. And in this case, he's going after him over a false allegation that the Department of Justice was weaponized against parents during COVID as a result of all of the activity we saw at school board meetings. Now, I want to be sure here, as you listen to this clip, I want you to recall exactly what happened throughout the entirety of COVID to the detriment of parents, of teachers, and especially students because of the AstroTurf organizing of groups like Moms for Liberty and all these other groups that made sure that we could not have any mask mandates, any vaccine mandates, and we couldn't even shut down because of the pure raucousness and ridiculousness of the showcases that they made at the school board. I mean, literally, they were chasing members of school board across the country. They were chasing them out. People had to run and get in their cars to escape these groups. So these groups that were organized in an AstroTurf sense, they were dangerous. They posed a threat. People literally had to run for their lives out of fear for these groups. And John Kennedy is setting this up Senator John Kennedy is setting this up to make it seem as though anyone who asked questions about this, we were wrong. And anyone who asked questions about all of the mayhem that we saw at the school board meetings, we were targeting these parents. And that the Department of Justice allegedly sent out a memo to specifically target these parents. Listen to the question from John Kennedy and listen to Merrick Garland debunk it in its entirety.
Didn't you understand the chilling effect that it would have to parents when you issued your directive, when you directed your criminal divisions and your counterterrorism divisions to investigate parents who were angry at school boards and administrators during COVID?
So, Senator, if you just give me a moment to put the full context, I did not do that. I did not issue any memorandum directing the investigation of parents who were concerned about their children. Quite to the contrary, the memorandum that you're talking about says at the very beginning of the memorandum that vigorous public debate is protected by the First Amendment. And the kind of concerns that you're talking about are, as expressed by parents, are, of course, completely protected. The memorandum was aimed at violence and threats of violence against a whole host of school personnel. It was not aimed at parents making complaints to their school board. And it came in the context of a whole series of other kinds of violent threats and violence against other public officials.
Well, don't worry about that, right? That's not that. See, Ted Cruz wants you to be concerned about the Supreme Court justices who had protesters show up outside of their house, right? Because that's unacceptable. But in terms of actual threats of pause, had a single protester done anything that was remotely akin to a threat, anything remotely hostile towards the Supreme Court justices, there were federal agents who would take them down. OK, let's not be foolish and think that the Supreme Court, the justices are out here unprotected. School board members are unprotected and they received death threats, violence. I mean, people literally had to run out of school board meetings, jump in their car and escape because of the derangement that came from the anti-vax conspiracy theorists who said that this was a pandemic, right? And so, of course, in America, we have to make range, right? We have to make room. We have to have the range to encompass the idiots. The arguments of idiots must be tolerated in a democracy. I wish that wasn't true sometimes, but it is true because we have an abundance of idiots and morons, intentionally obtuse individuals who like to play stupid to the point where now you really are just stupid. But they play dumb so long in order to accomplish a political agenda. And we have to entertain it underneath the auspices of free speech. This is the challenge for the people of good faith, right? Because so long as ignorant speech is promoted as much as it is in the United States of America, it's not even a competition of free speech. Ignorant speech has more money behind it than logical speech. And yet we're in a position, this question that was asked by Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, this question that was asked is trying to give even more deference to the morons. See, Idiocracy, the movie, really didn't capture how quickly we would descend. Like they said over in the movie, it was over a course of a few centuries that we devolved into a complete and total cluster F of stupidity. But I believe that we're there now. We're there by the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene being in power, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, John Kennedy of Louisiana being in power, these are the village idiots who are giving voice to even more village idiots who want to do harm. Let's start there. The arguments against vaccines, against mask mandates, against shutting down caused more harm. We're somewhere near 1.5, probably 1.8 million dead from COVID-19. It is a direct result of the idiocy that came from those groups and politicians, but those groups that John Kennedy is trying to make seem like, oh, they're so fragile. They're so fragile. They've the chilling effect of looking into violent groups. That's what he's trying. They are trying to give blanket cover to groups that are violent because those groups continue to push the conservative agenda. Meanwhile, if you protested the decision of Roe versus Wade, if you showed up outside of a Supreme Court justice's house and had a silent protest, Ted Cruz wants you thrown in jail. Never mind. I mean, of course, I do appreciate Merrick Garland clearing up the fact that he didn't actually do what conservatives have spread throughout the country. It doesn't matter that he didn't do what they accused him of. All that matters is that the accusation has stuck all the way to the point where now he's being asked about it in front of the Senate testimony in the Senate hearing. This is, do you see the echo chamber? Do you see the hermetically sealed bubble that the ignorance in this country gets to protect it until it foments all the way to the top? And before you know it, we're dealing with a nation that doesn't want to put on a mask during a full-blown pandemic and now has to pretend as though the pandemic is gone because, the idiots are in charge and they're protected and they're showing up to your school boards and they're showing up to your places of employment and they're protesting for us to get even stupider in this country.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
And here we go. Very special welcome to our two newest patrons. Welcome to Mark Alain Derry. Thank you so much for becoming a patron. And Perry Anderson. How's it going? Thank you so much for becoming a patron. This patron party is for the two of you. Everybody turn up for a second. Oh, wait a minute. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, none of the commercial interruptions, and you get access to our bi-weekly patron party, which we just had one last Friday. It was dope. You definitely don't want to miss the next one. Patreon.com/The BPD Show, and we'll be back right after this. Unless you're a patron, which you don't have any commercials.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Welcome back. I am so looking forward to the escalation in the war between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. I have a clip of conservative activist, if you want to call her that, Laura Loomer, who showed up at a Ron DeSantis rally and tried to have her own Donald Trump rally and gathering. I don't want to say rally. Let's say gathering. They were at a bookstore. And in the video, you could hear the security officer telling the pro-Trump supporters that he was instructed to remove anyone who was wearing a Donald Trump shirt. And in fact, at the end of the clip, you could hear him saying he's going to call OPD, Orlando Police Department. Take a listen in.
And they were in that line with them to meet the president? Yes. Why? Because of what you're wearing? Because they told me to say anybody wearing Trump has to go right now. During the signage. During the signage. Free speech. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I have to call LPD now.
That's fine. There you go. That's all right.
So they called the police, and of course the group dispersed, and that was the end of it. But I love this has over 1.4 million views or something on Twitter right now. I absolutely love the fact that Ron DeSantis is not going to be able to survive his fascist leanings when he has to wield them against other conservatives. I mean, conservatives unify and they love to attack the free speech of anyone who's not a conservative. But they're not going to tolerate that amongst themselves. Or did they just tolerate it and have to do what the police said? Either way it goes, it created a spectacular piece of content that now has the Republican Party splintering even more as people are mounting up to defend Ron DeSantis's right to have a rally without intrusion from Donald Trump supporters. Of plenty of people doing that. And then, of course, the Donald Trump supporters was like, no, he was here first. He's the one that created you, Ron DeSantis. How dare you say we can't come to a rally and wear a Donald Trump? I'm absolutely loving the Schadenfreude. You know, to the people who deserve to have a full blown like cat fight, just ripping each other's hair out in front of the entire nation to see, and both of them come out looking like scoundrels. The people who deserve that the most, that's Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump. Now, if you ask me if I have a dog or a horse in the fight, you know what? Ron DeSantis is a devoted racist and fascist who has very specific plans on how to overthrow this government. Listen to this clip of him discussing his plan to, quote unquote, reconstitute the federal government by firing civil service employees.
There was one, there was a proposal that I think a lot of us wanted to see under the prior administration to do a Schedule F. So anybody that has any policy role is classified as a Schedule F, and they can be removed by the president. The left would litigate that, but I honestly think we would win on that in the Supreme Court. And I also think it's one thing to have some type of job rules for the bowels of the bureaucracy, like your supervisor, what they can do. President of the United States has Article 2 power. Who controls the executive branch?
Right.
Is it the elected president, or is it some bureaucrat in the bowels of the bureaucracy that can't be fired? And so I think push needs to come to shove on this, but whoever gets a majority of the Electoral College has the right to impose their agenda through the executive branch.
Right.
And what they did with President Trump was basically try to nullify the election through not only bureaucratic intransigence, but malfeasance with the collusion hoax and some of those things. And so reconstitutionalizing government starts with reconstitutionalizing the executive branch under Article 2.
Yeah. He's trying to make it very opaque what he's discussing there, but he is discussing having the freedom as the president of the United States to completely eliminate, wipe out an entire list of civil servants who the president doesn't approve of. Listen to how he, just very casually said that, of course, this is going to be litigated, but we are going to take it to our conservative Supreme Court, and I think we can win there. Well, of course he can win there. One of the things that, and this is what he was hinting at in the last administration, in the Trump administration, one of the things that did help save America from Donald Trump's complete and total ignorance. That's just the best way. Because some of the decisions that Donald Trump was making were absolutely detrimental to the United States of America. And it was civil servants who were duty bound by their oath to protect the United States of America from threats, domestic and foreign. Donald Trump was a domestic threat. And what they're looking at doing, what Ron DeSantis wants to do is say, when I get in there, I plan on imposing my entire agenda, no matter how it conflicts with civil servants' role there to protect the United States of America, not there to just roll over and capitulate to whatever president is in power right now. So if you ask me if I have a horse in the race between Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump, it's an unpopular opinion, but I hope Donald Trump mops the floor with Ron DeSantis, because he is a committed and devout racist and a fascist, a trained authoritarian who sat across the table with a certain giddiness, according to the Real News Network, when he was supervising the torture of detainees. With a certain smile on his face, a detainee said, The guy who preached and taught pro-Confederate and pro-slavery lessons in his first year out of Ivy League college. I mean, that's how long he has been committed to his racism, to his fascism. He is the perfect marriage between the Confederacy and Mussolini. That is Ron DeSantis. And I do believe that he is he will run the ball way further towards authoritarianism and fascism than Donald Trump can, because Donald Trump is a moron. Ron DeSantis is a calculating fascist. Donald Trump is just, he's just whoever's going to stroke his ego that day. He's going to try to make them happy. Neither one of them needs to be near power ever again. Ever again. But if we had to be saddled with one, it should not be Ron DeSantis. But God forbid we have Donald Trump. Guy, my God, 2024. I hate to say it, folks. It's coming. I hate to say it, but 2024 might be one of the most important elections of our lifetime. We can't let either one of those fascists get into power. Patrons, stay tuned. Everyone else, see you tomorrow.